we're still sitting here at Banana Jam because I've got to do a monster recording session. My goal is to record or to release one podcast a day for the month of November because it's...
One podcast a day?
Yeah, so it's National Podcasting Day somewhere, I think in America.
Okay.
So today we released a podcast interview with His Royal Highness Prince of Bavaria, and we've recorded another podcast, and now it's Rob's turn. Now, anybody who's involved in craft beer will know Rob because Rob is one of the founders of League of Beers. And he's brought a lot of joy to a lot of people, especially in far-off places like game farms in the northern province. But not only that, also in Sandton. I think you once told me most of your customers live in Sandton.
Yeah, big time.
Which was probably where they got really nice access to good craft beer, but yet they still choose to buy from the League of Beers or Yuppiechef. So I want to welcome Rob Heyns.
How's it, Olga? Thank you.
And I really want to go back a few steps and really find out how you got involved in this beautiful industry and how or where you see yourself. And I like talking to entrepreneurs, finding out their story and just see if there's any lessons and stories that we can find out that not everybody knows.
Okay, so don't learn from me is the first tip. If I give any advice, don't follow it.
Yeah, so I mean the story that I know is that you know my cousin,
yeah,
and that you had some crazy idea or that you have a forum or a meeting session.
Yeah, he half spurned the idea actually. Your cousin actually gave the idea to me.
Okay.
Yeah. So we were a week prior, so a few steps back, I left my job working for Fairview because I wanted to follow my own destiny, and I was a big belief, business interests me, I was a big belief that e-commerce, there was something was bubbling over in e-commerce.
And Fairview is a wine farm.
Yeah.
And that is where CBC is, or next door.
Okay. Yeah. I'd worked for Fairview most of high school and university, did a stint in retail, and then was offered a job at Fairview selling. I must remember not to speak too quickly and I must enunciate. The Human Torch was denied a bank loan today. New York, unique. So left Fairview and it was great there, but I wanted to start my own thing in e-commerce. I believed there was something happening there. I think at that stage not many people did, and I'd made friends with the guys from Yuppiechef and was getting guidance from them. I went and did a course at UCT where I met Nzeka, and we gelled and realized we had an equally fiery work ethic and we knew we'd do something together. Mm-hmm. We had a meeting with Andrew, owner of Yuppiechef, and I was saying to him, listen, we're going to start something in e-commerce. What would you, if you were to start an e-commerce business from scratch, what would you start? And he had this kind of checklist, right? And included in that checklist was like the ability to work with a community, being passionate about your product, and there was various other things, right? He probably also mentioned things like a margin and a couple of financial metrics, which
but you didn't hear those.
Promptly ignored. Yeah. Then a week later, I'm sitting with your cousin Dave Kuzel, and we were just talking about ideas, just throwing stuff around. And I've been a beer fan forever. Like I was offered jobs at SAB after university, and I just didn't want to take it because it didn't feel like the right way to do beer for me, right? Felt like you'd be part of a giant, monstrous, corporate, successful organization. I mean, what is successful craft beer? It's Anheuser-Busch and SAB, right? Because they all started as tiny breweries. Yeah. But I was more interested in the niche, smaller things, and I think a year or two prior, I'd had a Vedette extra white in Paris, and I was like, I've got to be in this beer thing, right? And it just stayed in my mind. Every time I traveled, I was just exploring and tasting different beers, but I saw it as a hobby. So sitting with Dave, throwing ideas around, and he's like, you know what's a problem is that there's all this home brewing and craft brewing, and you just can't get hold of this stuff. And I'm like, wait a second. That's what e-commerce does. It gets the stuff that you can't get, and it gets it to you. And then I saw the list that Andrew from Yuppiechef had given me, and like just was ticking boxes. Obviously, I missed the financial boxes.
Like the community thing.
The big driver was community, being passionate about what it is.
Ordering on fanaticism.
Yeah. and trends that were growing. He was at that stage also a big believer in the slow food movement, which I've been a big follower of.
So is Andrew the guy with the hair?
The afro?
Yeah.
No, that's Paul.
Paul? Oh yeah. Paul Gulatis.
That's right, yeah. So Paul, Andrew, and Shane, kind of the founders of Yuppiechef. Paul's probably the more famous one, but Andrew more involved directly with Yuppiechef. And I had the strongest relationship with Andrew. So I saw Andrew's list, all these boxes got ticked, and I was like, booyah, that is what I'm going to do. I am going to do craft beer online. And I said to Nzeka, we can do this artisanal beer thingy, we'll figure it out. And then we didn't speak for a while, and I just started putting the plan together, started speaking to Ross from Jack Black, who I knew quite well, Greg, Banana Jam, I spoke to him a lot, Marnie, Run Liquors, and eventually myself and Marnie had a chat, and Marnie was like, he could see this, I remember his body movement, there's a bit of synergy, this kind of weird, looked like a dad dance. I'll never forget that. I was like, let's do this. So we started putting together League of Beers. In between, Ross said, listen, this beer online thing's a stupid idea, come work for me. And I was like, well, this is a good way to get impact into the industry. And because he didn't believe my company would have any impact, he didn't mind me working for him. Got to know Kevin from Darling really well, got to know Rui from Man Union quite well, got to know Russell, Derek and Dan from Devil's Peak quite well. So got quite good, which has stood me in good stead.
Made a good network.
One of the main things is being the network and the relationships. It's a very beer's a relational thing, you know. So it was luckily I like people, beer people like people, so we all got on quite well, which has actually been very useful because those are the guys that I've done the most business with over the years. As much as we wanted to speak to the new consumers and we wanted to speak to help the new brewers, having that solid founding base with the key guys has been huge. And those are the guys who, I remember I was saying to someone the other day, kind of the most impactful people in craft beer, in my opinion, in South Africa, if you're at the original craft beer project that Greg put together, was held at Simon's restaurant, and the names and faces there, those are some of the guys with the biggest impact in craft beer in South Africa. And we launched League of Beers at the initial craft beer project.
What year was it?
2012, August. End of July, August. Yeah. Our first customer, Randolph Jorberg, found us online. Like, we weren't even live. Our URL had just been registered, and this guy buys. I'm like, what is going on here? Like, what kind of SEO tricks is this guy using that he can actually find us? Yeah. So I hand delivered, met the guy, and found out his whole story and relationships built.
And that was when did he start the beer house?
About a year later. Okay. But it was a long-term project. But I remember, so Ross not thinking League of Beers would be a big thing. Eventually it got to the point where on my brother's wedding day, on like the 1st of December, I think it was, in 2012, sent me an email telling me that he's promptly firing me from Jack Black because League of Beers grew really quickly. So in those first 3 months, we shot out the blocks. I think if you take eCommerce as an example, Yuppiechef's first year in 2006, when they were building the whole eCommerce thing, they did about 200 sales in their first year. We did 200 sales in our second month. Okay. And by November, we had 70 subscribers to our Beer of the Month club, which we, in the same breath in an interview that Nzeka said we have a Beer of the Month club, a week later we developed a Beer of the Month club, and a week later after that we had 70 subscribers. So it was luck from a timing point of view. Craft beer was in the right place, e-commerce in the right place. It was all kind of coming together, and we luckily could execute.
And it was still very rare to find beer. I think now it's a little bit easier to find some beer.
Well, our mission's always been the same, right? So the initial mission was to find beer and get them, kind of bring the rare beers to the consumers, and that was straightforward. E-commerce solved that, and a lot of our initial customers are like that. The model's gone much more in the direction of the Beer of the Month club, because through the Beer of the Month club, because we're ordering large volumes, we can go buy a pallet from Australia and go buy a pallet from Scotland and go buy a pallet from the States, and we can get stuff that other people can't get. So the exploration journey of it continues. For anybody in South Africa, we can put beers in there that other people can't get their hands on. So that's what's kind of kept us relevant.
And before that, you said you worked for Fairview for a long time. Where did you grow up? Obviously in Stellenbosch or
Fairview's in Paarl. I born in Pretoria, moved around a lot, mixed family history, bit of a relatively tough upbringing. I was at Rondebosch, but we had to go on to bursaries because we couldn't afford to stay in the school. Then Mom got together with a dude from Fairview, Charles, and I ended up working on the farm during school holidays, and was driven very hard. I was treated Like, if you think sons get treated toughly, I was given the tough end of the stick. There were still family jokes about the fact that I was drilled. But it was cool because I had to work in the vineyards, work on the wine farm, work doing the toughest work, and developed a really good work ethic. So the drive was there because I could see this entrepreneurial vibe that this guy had, and that inspired me. But he was making me work like as hard as anybody in the worst environment, in the boiling pile sun. So he also developed the work ethic because, like, nothing's worse than working. There'll never be tougher work than working in a vineyard, right? And I'm not built for working in a vineyard. Most of those guys are close to the ground. You give me a shovel, it's a long way down. So that helps a lot. But then also that's when I got exposed to the winemaking process and the story behind it and the whole artisanal.
Because Charles is really good at telling stories and
big time. Yeah. So ironically, and this almost, maybe this was through osmosis, but Sugarbird. We chose the Sugarbird because the Sugarbird selects its favorite Fynbos, and Goats to Rome is the same idea. The goats went to the vineyard selecting its favorite grapes, and it wasn't on purpose, but it obviously fell in by. I only realized that in hindsight. But
did you ever? Do your guys here make their own or ferment wine in bags in the vineyard? Like my brothers.
The farm workers?
Yeah.
No.
My brothers bought some farms in Uppington.
Oh, really?
In a place called Groot Drink. I really like the name. And the farm workers, one of the problems is they pick grapes, put it in plastic bags and hide it in the vineyard.
Oh, really?
And then it ferments and they drink that.
No, so that of all farms that would not fly would be Fairview. So Charles is very into like worker empowerment and worker development and work entrepreneurship.
Good wine.
Well, yeah, he does good wine.
But for his workers.
No wine for the workers. So he's actually had government long before there were a lot of BE type of projects in place. He was doing these kind of things of empowering his workers in the 90s. There was no such thing in the 90s. And a lot of government officials used to come and see him to understand how his projects worked. And you find probably the I'm not going to say this, but basically one of his famous employees on a farm next door and him there, probably the biggest challenge is the amount of alcohol consumption. Because he's not a big believer in daily alcohol consumption. It's a recreational after-hours thing versus a tasting during the day. If anybody figures that out, that's your own problem. Was inspired by that. It was when if I behaved really well, I got to work in the tasting room and I got to sell wine and taste wine and understand wine. And there was no issue with tasting wine in there because you had to get to know your product. So I got to understand the flavor and nuances of wine and of the cheeses. And what I realized, one of my favorite ones was there was this product called the SMV. And the story of how it was made, as Shiraz Mourvedre Viognier, was very interesting. The way the grapes were sourced was very interesting. But there was this kicker to it because it was Shiraz Mourvedre Viognier, but you could also describe it as sensuous, mysterious, and voluptuous. And you say those magic words, and it's sold. And I was like, "That's magic," and just something clicked, And so I suppose that's always been my kind of interest in craft beer versus mainstream beer. It's just that there's that extra magic, when there's passion gone into it, and there's story behind it, and there's something to it that like you can't get on a mass-produced level,
And I think the consumer more and more so can smell agencies. They can smell an ad agency. They can smell. They can smell corporate.
Yeah, big time.
And it's not that. I mean, I've seen it in the retail where the big brands or the big brewers come. They launch wannabe craft beer, and the consumer,
people can see it a mile away. That's and kind of it's a lot of that is our fault because we've educated the consumer as to what is the real deal. At the same time, in the same breath, right? I don't believe in craft for the sake of craft. Like, don't go brew out of a bucket and think that that's better, right?
It's not.
Quality is quality. Make the best thing that you can make, and that people will buy. People buy into that.
Not the best brand.
Or don't make not the best brand or the cheapest production. Both, it's the wrong way around. It's like make the best product and tell your consumer about that product, and you'll be okay.
And he's happy. Like we've just tasted some of Greg's coconut beer, and I mean, I would pay. What did he say? 60 rand a pint. I would.
Fine.
It's because you want that experience and you've seen Greg's passion and everything go into it.
Well, the whole experience ties into story and enjoyment, and that's quite important. I mean, a lot of people buy craft beer for the sake of status because craft across the craft industry has become quite aspirational, and there's room for bullshit there. But as you say, people start sniffing it out. The problem with craft is that it educates consumers. The more you educate consumers, the less they're going to fall for the BS.
But there's still, there's also still a space for mainstream lagers. I think even if you know what you're drinking, I think it's fine.
Yeah. I mean, I hate the product, and I've said this openly. I hate Castle Light as a product. As a marketing business proposition, I'm like in awe of those guys.
Yeah.
Like what they've done. They've got the most aspirational product again across every part of South Africa. How do they do that? That's amazing. Like, I love it. It's like you go into, it's not just like people speak about going to Soweto and you'll see Castle Light there. Well, I can get that. I'm talking about I was in Natal. We went to Pluhluwe. Good pronunciation, eh? And as opposed to everyone else says Shlashliwi. So we went. There's like these townships on the way there, and this is the sticks, right? And there's Castle Light there being consumed there. I'm like my hat goes off to you guys. That is good work.
Yeah.
The
green bottle.
Yeah, the bloody green bottle. Yeah.
Yeah. And but the work at back to the League of Beers. I mean, that was hard work.
Yeah.
Moni has told me.
Yes.
Long lines of beer.
Yeah. So the thing is about League of Beers, it's a really bad business model.
Yeah, because it's
beer is relatively cheap for a distributable product, but it's still expensive to the end consumer. It's very fragile, and it's quite competitive actually. So there was no margin in the product. So we had multiple challenges. So our first challenge was the fact that we had no money, but we were selling and with no ability to scale. We were working. Marnie's bottle store, Rule Out Knickers, got turned into the League of Beers warehouse in the first couple of months, with poor old Troy May packing the boxes.
Really?
Yeah. Everyone goes back long ways. And so that wouldn't work. So we needed to find a way to scale. Luckily, I was friends with the Yuppiechef guys because I was speaking to investors who wanted to throw money at this craft beer thing. But we had no business model, and I didn't know how to build a warehouse. Whereas by joining Yuppiechef, we all of a sudden had access to operating like professionals, right?
Yeah.
The problem is that we took the craft beer industry in 2012 and inserted into Yuppiechef, who were a professional organization. So my first year at Yuppiechef was a nightmare of trying to blend these two, right? Yeah. But then so the sales were always good because the demand was there. I mean, good products, everything like that. Then about a year or two into it, we realized that we weren't making any money. It was beer charity. We were getting beer to people across the country and making no money out of it. So the guys at Yuppiechef came back to me and said, listen, you need to turn this into a business. And I was like, okay, well, how? And they said, well, the consumer's not going to pay anything more. We actually need to give the consumer a better price, right? So you need to get the brewers to give you ridiculous discounts. And I was like, well, the brewers, these guys will give 5% discount if you're macro. They're going to laugh at us if we ask them for a discount. But then, so what we started working on is, okay, how do we get it to a point where they want to give us that discount? Yeah. So we started changing our business model, started focusing heavily on consumer education and heavily on seeding the right product with the right people, getting the consumption to happen, and leveraging all our databases that we had, so that in actual fact we had something of value to offer the brewers. Because if you look at wine of the month models across the world, that is actually how they work. So we started
a marketing business, not a sales business.
Completely. I mean, I was speaking to Alan from Red Rock earlier on today, and he was saying about how he sees League of Beers as a key partner in marketing. I was like, good, because there are better distribution options. Your product will be available through us, but use us as a marketing tool if we're going to work together. If you don't see it as a marketing tool, you're missing the point, right? Because the thing is, we have access to people who are super passionate about craft beer. If you look at our tasting league, it's like, I think there's about 30 people on there who are they're the thought leaders and the trend leaders in craft beer, right? And you look at the people who are consuming, these guys are so passionate about the product that they subscribe to get beer delivered to their door every month at a premium price, right? Yeah. So this is the people you want consuming your product because they're going to tell other people about it, right? And then through Yuppiechef, we've got this big foodie market, so we can then speak to these 200,000 foodies through our newsletter. So we can properly guarantee consumption, guarantee seeding with the right people, and put into people to actually give a fair criticism about your product. If your product's not good, I've said to a lot of brewers, give us bad product at your peril, because it's going to kill your brand, but you can make your brand huge if you give us good product. And then obviously we talk about it through Yuppiechef. So then the first couple of brewers I went to absolutely laughed at me. To their credit, Gary from Citizen and Wolfgang and Andy from CBC kind of had faith in us. And a lot of that came from Scott saying to Andy, back these guys, they're doing something good. And kind of got taken over. And we got, I think Kevin from Darling gave us a chance, all those old relationships. And we started, and it was a lot of relationship that brewers had faith in what we could do, even though they thought we were talking smoke in our socks, right? But then we got some momentum, and then all of a sudden it started coming together. And then next thing you know, then Devil's Peak are like, hey guys, we got to do something, you know? And then we started building on this database and building this audience. And as Andrew said, with Yuppiechef, the community. So we leveraged the community. We gave the community what they wanted, but the community gave the brewers what they wanted. So we became more of a platform.
Yeah. So platform is a good word.
And that's what changed our business model.
Yeah.
So making that work was a lot of blood, sweat, and beers. Like it was hard work. Like 60 to 80-hour weeks was the kind of the norm for many years. Many, I say 4 years, but like it's a long time consistently, right? And then
So you sold the business to Yuppiechef?
Yeah.
In?
2013.
2013.
Yeah.
And I remember I was at some e-commerce conference in Joburg, and Paul was doing a talk, and he said, and we're going into the beer business. And then in the food queue, I said to him, how are you going to deliver, and how are you not going to deliver to under 18s?
Yes, because then he came to me with the same question.
Did he?
Yeah. You know what solves it generally? Credit cards.
Okay. Yeah, because most of them are adults, eh?
Yeah, because you can do these like, don't buy under 18s, all these things. But if you just put a credit card there, it gets rid of most of that challenge, because you don't want to make multiple steps in buying.
So that was 2013 when he would have been at that conference, I guess.
Yeah. Also a Durbanite like yourself.
Okay.
Yeah. Where were you at school?
In the Midlands.
School?
Hermansburg.
At?
Hermansburg.
Okay, cool. You're not a fancy snooty one.
No, it's just the oldest.
Yeah.
Kind of,
okay, cool.
Yeah.
He was also at school in the Midlands.
The fancy snooty one.
Fancy snooty one.
Yeah.
Good school. If I had enough money, I would have gone there or sent my kids there one day. Nice view of Maritzburg, Peter Maritzburg. Yeah.
Okay, so Yuppiechef has become a marketing platform for new brands and obviously existing brands.
And we're doing a similar thing with gin.
Yeah.
It's a great leveraging platform. I'll give an example of Cruxland when they had this idea, like a PR stint of making a bit of a gin, and they did a newsletter with us, and 2-3 pallets later through Yuppiechef, and they realized, well, here's a business, guys. Musgrave Pink. It was a kind of a concept. It was doing quite well. Simon was brave enough to do a 2-for-1, buy 2 get 1 free deal. So basically 1,000 rand for 3 bottles of gin. Yeah, went absolutely nuts.
Really?
Yeah. Now Simon's gin flies through us, and helped like get Pink to the next level. I mean, Pink is one of the best selling gins in South Africa now.
Yeah.
So that's. There's a lot of power in the thing is about the Yuppiechef and Liga Beers databases. It's people are super engaged, like really into food and beer and stuff. So if your product's good and you put it in front of them, it's going to fly.
Yeah.
If your product is full of nonsense, then they'll see right through it.
Yeah.
So the discerning customer base, which is quite useful.
And can I ask a tip for the brewers? I mean, there's not many brewers that I'm aware of that do a lot of online sales. Do you know of anybody that
does their own online sales?
Yeah.
I mean, not side of us. If you're thinking of getting into online sales as a brewer, don't be an idiot. Like, you know how difficult it is, like, for us to get right.
Yeah.
So when we see competition, we kind of laugh because it was so difficult to make it work. We've gone so far down the line. It's like, man, go for it. Like, competition's cool, gets more people online.
No, I'm just asking,
Would you do online?
Have you seen anybody successfully do it?
No, I know for a fact that we're the only people who are doing beer successfully, sustainably online.
Yeah.
And I know that because of the people we speak to in the industry, our competitors. A lot of our competitors have tried and stopped.
Like Takealot, is that working? No.
Can't really comment too much on that.
Yeah.
But I do know, having spoken to a lot of these guys, that they struggle.
I should have asked Trevor, who was here earlier on a podcast, because
Who's Trevor?
Trevor from Old Potters.
Oh yes, I saw him. I bumped into him. Yeah.
And,
Trevor was at school with Dave Matthews. I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my goodness, may I touch you?
Trevor was at school with Andre from Woodstock as well.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't realize Andre was such a refined Saints boy.
Yeah. I've had this discussion with a friend of mine who's got an e-commerce business, and we're talking about opportunities for retailers. And not for retailers, for brewers. And the other retailers, I think, it is a big challenge to do online.
No, I wouldn't do it at all.
Yeah.
No.
Even the other spirits.
A gin works well.
Yeah.
No, just we buy gin at whatever they sell it to us at, and we sell it on. It's fine. It's because your delivery as a percentage of your product cost is so much smaller. With beer, it's a very high percentage of.
Yeah.
So here's an example. Delivery as a percentage of the average Yuppiechef sale is 7.5%, plus minus. Delivery as a percentage of League of Beer's sales is 30%. There's a broken business model right there.
Yeah.
Hence Beer of the Month Club.
And so my whole, people ask me, where's the future of beer? And I say, in local.
Brew pubs.
You have to sell your beer as much as you can in your own premises.
Yeah, distribution's a
then-
monster.
and do the local brewery, the local retailers. And don't ship your beer across the world.
No, it's difficult. It's not. I wouldn't say don't do it. What you do need is some good canning solutions. Then you could do some a lot of distribution across the world. But more about that later.
You're way ahead of your time. And then obviously you've done some interesting things with gin. You started quite early with
Jennifer Montaigne. Yeah. What got me into gin was beer.
Yeah, obviously.
So.
I said a long time I stopped. I didn't want to. I got a lot of people when the craft beer thing started asking me, "Won't you sell and distribute our beer?" And I said, "I'll never do that again," because I moved from beer into spirits, and you just see the difference.
That's easier to work with.
It's just so much easier.
Well, the big thing is about having a uniquely South African product, and logistics came second. So. I've been, since founding League of Beers, I wanted to export South African craft beer. Because my Twitter profile will tell you that I'm passionate about craft beer, South Africa, and the Dave Matthews Band. And Dave Matthews Band of no relevance. But I wanted to export South African craft beer badly for a long time. I just wanted to get good South African product out there, and more and more hurdles. And one of the big hurdles was our best ingredients are not from here. So then I take a brand overseas, nobody knows the brand, and the ingredients are from Europe and America.
Yeah.
So what is the differentiating factor? It's a bit of a difficult sell, and it's difficult logistically to get the beer there. Whereas with gin, this whole Fynbos thing, I love it. So we've got, if you look at when craft beer started versus when this craft gin movement started, maybe distillation's easier, or maybe it's not, but the guys have entered at a higher level of quality. So a lot of our local startup gins are really good. Whereas when our beers started off, they weren't. It's different now. I was judging at the homebrewers competition, the national homebrewers competition last week Sunday. Not one bad beer. Now you take that to a judging 3 years ago for craft breweries, professional craft breweries in South Africa, half the beers would have been bad.
Really?
So craft beers come a long way in South Africa, whereas gin started at a higher level of quality.
Yeah.
And I think distillations hides a lot of evils, but it means we can already start competing on an international level. So you've got a lot of local gins that are really good, right? Then we get a lot of imports here, and you compare them, and actually some of our stuff is better. And one of the factors that's make it better is we've gone, like craft beer, our gins are high flavor, and a lot of it is Fynbos driven. Not all. But that idea of Fynbos, I'm well, that's flippin' cool. That's something is uniquely South African. Wow, I want to take that overseas.
Yeah.
And so we made Jennifer Montaigne with the idea of making the best gin we could, with Hope and Hopkins. And the idea was to take that overseas, internationally. It didn't work out. Various problems came about, so that project doesn't hold, which inspired me to kind of start the Sugarbird. And the idea with the Sugarbird was, let's make a Fynbos gin that can do international and local, because Jennifer Montaigne had a high price point. So we thought, let's start operating with great quality gin, with a craft ethos of great recipe, great Fynbos, high flavor, great purity, all these kind of things. But let's start operating at a slightly higher level, which is why we did the whole crowdfunding thing. So let's make this not on a small batch of 400 bottles, or 3 or 2 or 5, whatever. Let's start making this on a 3,000 to 5,000 bottle batch, right? So we get scale in there, so bring the costs right down. Let's work with guys outside of the industry who, from a spirits point of view, have got spirits down pat, but can operate at that kind of scale. And let's bring our craft ethos of craft beer and our flavor notes and all our finicky flavor note finesse to the game. And let's kind of mold, not mainstream, but a bit of a scale with the high quality product. So that the first goal for Sugarbird was, we call it Just Good Gin, so it's not meant to be pretentious. It's meant to be a fun gin, because people get very into the whole pretentious flavor notes. I do, I'm the worst, right? But the majority of people, like what I find with my friends, they don't want to hear all my nonsense about this note and that, but they just want to enjoy their product, right? Just give me a glass of it. And gin especially, it's a refreshing drink. So like, mix your Sugarbird, we call it Just Good Gin because we want to you can do all the fancy stuff, but just have it the way you want it. That's the most important thing. And we made it an accessible price point. So it's at a price point that is closer to your Tanqueray Bombay Sapphire, so it's a little bit of a step up, but it's a lower price point than a lot of the craft gins, which is, I'm sure, not great for them. But what it does is it makes an entry-level drug. So we're getting more people to not necessarily go for the international ones, but go for something local and realize how great Fynbos Gin is and open them to the world of Fynbos Gin. So make an accessible gin for South Africans. And the same thing when we go overseas. Take an accessibly priced South African Fynbos Gin and start like carving a niche for South African Fynbos Gin, leveraging on the rooibos thing in international markets so that more South African Fynbos Gins and South African gins can get into those markets. Because like for us, it's like I don't get scarcity. It's about make the pie bigger. Like just get everybody into it. And like for me, it's like if you have a restaurant on a back end street, nobody's gonna know to go there. But if you've got 5 restaurants, people will know to go there. The same thing. We're going to have a tough time selling a Fynbos gin in markets that have never heard of Fynbos before. But if we go there and carve a bit of a path, and the next thing Wildera joins us with their Fynbos gin, and the next thing Bloodlemon with a slightly different bit of a Fynbos vibe comes, or like a local, even just a local South African gin. Next thing it's Hope and Hopkins, next thing Inverus, Jorgensen's, all these kind of guys. We can build this realization that South Africa can be a gin capital, you know. So that's a current mission.
Okay, tell us a little bit about the crowdfunding.
This goes to the entrepreneurial inspiration things. I've just believed in crowdfunding as a model to help entrepreneurs because, like, I think entrepreneurship is a great way to empower yourself, make a positive impact on community, world, all these esoteric things, right? With the crowdfunding, what's really cool about it is that you get 3 types of crowdfunding, right? Did you read Medium? I'm just going to Medium. I wrote a good article.
Did you?
Crowdfunding, why crowdfunding by Rob Heyns. That's who I am. So 3 types of crowdfunding. Charity-based crowdfunding is when help Jimmy pay for his operation, build a community center, save the flood victims, that kind of thing. It's very much out of the good of your heart, right? Yeah. Then you get equity-based crowdfunding. You know, a very good example, Equity for Punks, Brewdog, right? The biggest type, Kickstarter and Indiegogo, and it's South Africa Thundafund, is rewards-based crowdfunding. And all it is a market test. So I've got a concept. I'm going to pre-sell you my concept. So you have to buy it, and you're going to wait 30 days before it arrives, or 40 days or 60 days before it arrives. And if enough of you buy this thing, the project happens. I will make my product, and I will ship it to you. So what I've done is I've done a market test to see if people actually want it. Yeah. I've got cash in up front. I've started operating at scale. And we've kind of got the ball rolling and made cash run. So it's great. Like if you look in an African context, it's like a stokvel. It's community-driven business, right? Yeah.
And did you leverage obviously your platform not through Yuppiechef but
Thundafund?
No, I mean in terms of your followers or
no, we started from scratch because like I would like to think I have a minor following in beer. A few people would recognize me, I hope. Yeah. But the reality is in gin, I don't have much of a footprint. So we're starting from scratch. So Fork Off Police Guard, they did a crowdfunding campaign on Thundafund. And the thing is, it's Fork Off Police Guard. It's one of the biggest South African bands. So they've got an audience. We started with no audience. We built our audience from scratch, right? So it was a lot of hard work. So there was no leveraging, which is silly. You should kind of leverage, but it didn't feel right to try and shout to the craft beer people, now come back my gin. It's like this is...
Even I didn't get... I saw the message come.
Yeah.
But it didn't pull me in.
Yeah, well, it didn't feel like it was right for the beer people. Beer is beer, and there's a craft beer purity law, and I just felt like let beer be beer. And I've got a lot of work still to do with League of Beers. This is a separate project, and I thought let's get the gin community behind it, and different foodies. So we just started from scratch, which is kind of ballsy to be honest, because to start a crowdfunding campaign without an audience is very difficult. But I've done a little bit of marketing in my time, so we just tried some other tricks and got some people into it. So it's gone really well for us. My thing is I'm trying to educate people as to crowdfunding because it's also, you've heard the Wayne Gretzky analogy, don't go where the puck is, go where the puck is going. So e-commerce, it's always been where things were going. It's like apps were where things were going. Crowdfunding, it's huge around the world, and it's this great empowering business model for businesses. But South Africans don't trust it or don't understand it. So kind of like one of my submissions currently in life, not a submission, a minor mission, a minor little thing I want to try to get right in my whole entrepreneurial inspiration thing is to try and get people to crowdfund their businesses and get people to back crowdfunding, because then you get that platform effect and it kind of grows, snowballs on itself, because I just find it's I wouldn't, in actual fact, if I was a venture capitalist, right, I would say to any new business, go and crowdfund your product first, because it market tests it and it sees if you can coordinate and if you can market, and if you can do that, then I will give you money.
Yeah.
You know, it's a great test of a business.
And was it successful?
Campaign's not done. We've raised 460,000 so far. We're, I think, the 4th most successful crowdfunding campaign in South Africa. That's the kind of scale of how small it is. The top 2 were very big brands before. We came out of nowhere. We think we can get into 2nd place. So that'll be, our goal is to raise 750,000. It's looking like we'll get between 600,000 and 800,000 in the next 2 weeks. We should hit that mark, and then we'll close the campaign. We second to Falkhoff Police card, we can handle that. Next time we'll beat them.
Yeah. I mean, interesting you say.
Who drinks Coke anyway?
You talk about crowdfunding. I bought probably my 2nd bottle of craft gin on a crowdfunding campaign for.
Oh, really? New Harbour?
New Harbour.
Oh, cool.
I think Rooibos or something.
Yeah.
And but what struck me was, while he was doing his campaign, Andy Watts from Distel was doing his crowdfunding or something campaign where he sold some exclusive whiskey.
Oh, wow.
And watching them do it, and I think I had a discussion with Dave Kiesel, and we were the company that was running the whiskey, and it's the First Watch brand, the Three Ships brand, which is a local gin and whiskey, and he knew the agency that was doing it, and he said they probably charged more than they raised.
It's a marketing thing. Crowdfunding is largely a marketing thing. Like for us, we wanted to build an audience through it. So here's the thing, right? FMCG, fast moving consumer goods. I'm assuming your audience all knows that analogy, excuse the jargon. Anything in a supermarket, craft beer, cheese, wine, toilet paper, anything by Procter & Gamble, like it's a huge industry, retail, right? Three challenges, and I repeat this a lot, but it's this kind of my mantra of stuff that I focus on, right, of problems to solve. Difficult to scale, lots of competition, working capital for product, always an issue, right? So that's why crowdfunding is great, because you scale from day one, you get working capital up front, and you marketing your product in a way that other people don't. So that's why crowdfunding, that's why. There's a lot of fun stuff.
And what's the next challenge? So are you still fully employed at Yuppiechef, or how does that work?
I've got a kind of a part-time-ish contract. So at Yuppiechef, I'm working on 3 things. I'm trying to grow the subscriptions business.
Particularly for drinks? Or for beer, or
consumables.
For
subscriptions. It's food-ish subscriptions. We're not people won't buy a KitchenAid mixer every month. They won't subscribe to a KitchenAid mixer. But it's more than every color of NutriBullet.
It's more than just Yuppiechef. I mean, more than just League of Beers.
Yes. I mean. It's expanding the League of Beers model into Yuppiechef. Okay. Plus, I still make all the selections for every single product that goes into League of Beers. Probably should have handed that over a long time ago, but there's still that kind of passion and like just drawing to like let's call it out of interest more than anything else. And then the other thing is that what we did with League of Beers is we kind of turned the model on its head and realized how League of Beers and Yuppiechef could offer marketing to the producers. So I'm doing a similar thing, trying to work on a model where we can offer what we have to the suppliers who want it, and just try and, as opposed to like I have a bit of a reputation for driving a hard bargain, but the reality is I'm very collaborative. Like I try and find ways that the supplier can get more and the consumer can get more and we can get more. Everybody kind of win-win-win type of thing, right? So that's the one project I'm working on, but I'm only partially employed there. I'm running Sugarbird Gin, which is taking up a fair bit of time. That's a big focus, and I don't want to give away too much, but I've got other stuff in craft beer that I'm working on that I've mentioned to you off air that it's not like it's top secret stuff, but I mean, we don't need to tell everyone about it. We'll get it going first. But I see the craft beer industry in South Africa, statistically, is said to be retail sales of R1 billion, has a lot of problems and a lot of things that aren't yet fixed that even League of Beers, in all our might, can't fix. A lot of problems to solve. So it's really in the same way I mentioned a few minutes ago, the FMCG problems, it's like delving into those problems and how to solve those kind of problems for craft beer. So that's a big focus, because I'd like to see craft beer, what they say is 0.5% of South Africa's alcohol or even beer consumption. I'd like to see craft beer get to 5%, 10% of consumption in South Africa, and I think I know how. We'll see if I'm right. And it won't be all myself, that's also an important thing, but like we can do our bit. It's a kind of it's always been a working together thing, but I think we can get there. And a lot of people in the industry are worried about where craft beer is at this point in time. And the same thing happened throughout the world. You get these ebbs and flows. I think we're strong. We've got a good base, and we'll get better. But it'll require innovation. In the same way, I'm not panicking about the water crisis in Cape Town. But it will require some hard thought, some hard innovation, some very innovatively driven people to fix these problems. And I think in our small little way, we need that kind of thing in craft beer.
And just in terms of the business, is the subscription thing is obviously working, and is that still growing?
Not as fast as I would like. We sell a good couple of pallets every month. But I'd like to reach more South Africans, and I think we can do that by working with other databases, which I'm in the process of doing, of partnering with other companies, and seeing if we can bring down our delivery costs further to try and work on the price. Like, I think the League of Beers monthly mix case is a great value proposition, but if there's ways we can improve that value proposition and get more people into craft beer, we'd like to do that.
Okay. Good. It was a nice talk, and I mean, for me, it's valuable. I think it's valuable for the listeners. Thanks, Rob.
Cool. Thanks for chatting.
Just tell us where they can find you. Yuppiechef.com is where the home is now, or is it legal?
Well, anybody who knows me knows that I'm quite hard to track down. So me in particular, you're to struggle.
Your products.
So Yuppiechef.com is a good place for anything. You're going to find League of Beers, Sugarbird, or general Yuppiechef items. Sugarbird Gin is the website, at Sugarbird Gin, Twitter and Instagram, /Sugarbird Gin on Facebook. You all know League of Beers. It's in the same places it's always been. We'll get our social media happening again. Check out the Tasting League. I'd say that covers it.
Okay, and when are you launching the gin?
Gin's launched. So it's live on Yuppiechef, it's live on Thundafund. We're listed in Norman Goodfellas and we're listed in Macro. Our distributor has just dropped us, so we're trying to find another way to actually get the physical product there. I'd say expect mid-November. We'll be in all the big independents. We'll be in NGF, Norman Goodfellas and Macro. But right now, $2.99 Yuppiechef delivered to your door.
Wow.
It's a nice price for a gin delivered to your door.
Yeah, that's a good price.
And we'll have specials in December, so we're very generous.
Good. Nice chatting, Rob.
Cool. Thanks, Holger.
And let's see what Greg's got on tap downstairs.
Yeah, at Banana Jam. Do we mention that? And you did mention that we had Banana Jam. Good work at what you're doing. Keep pioneering the industry. I think you and I are on a similar page of like, let's drive through education. Let's get people into great product and supporting the industry as much as possible. So cheers to you as well.
Thanks. Cheers, Rob.
Sure. Bye.